Aha. Well, good afternoon. So this is our first podcast, if you like, for RPM It's Revolution Online. And joining me today, thank you very much, is CJ Wildheart.
Hello.
Hello. Bienvenue en France. De France, je devrais dire. But anyway, that's another story. So we're here to talk about whatever you like, obviously, but predominantly the new album Split, which, well, I'll say obviously for anybody who follows RPM, just reviewed. I knew I'd enjoy it. I didn't realize quite how much I would enjoy it.
Oh, thank you.
It's really, as you may have got across, you may have understood from checking the review, you know, it's, for me, it's kind of the best of everything, really. I enjoy all the albums, but for me, this is like a real balance of what you do best. I don't know how you feel about
it. Really, yeah, I feel it. Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's a really concise version of what I do best. It's like if you take there's a pop side to me, there's a definite punk side to me, and I can also riff out, and you know, it's some of my albums could be too poppy, some of them can be too intense sometimes, and this hits the middle ground. So it's a bit of of everything I kind of do, or well, I hope I do well. And yeah, so it's a good way of it. And for me, I don't know. I think this is solo album number 7, maybe, or 8. I don't know. I've stopped counting with albums. They just come out. But I'm a fan of this one, which is like I think it's the first time since I've been about probably 21 or 22. I've been a fan of an album I've actually been on and made. So I haven't got sick of this one, which is unbelievable. Yeah.
Is that normally the case that when you've finished recording and everything's checked and you're happy with it, once it's out there, you stop listening to it?
Yeah.
Next.
I mean, really honest. The last 2 Wildheart albums we made, I never heard them. I heard the masters, but I never actually listened to like the finished product. And normally with solo albums, it takes me about 4 months working on my own because I record most of the parts myself and I play most of the instruments myself apart from drums. So it's 4 months of quite intense work working on an album, and the last thing you really want to do is kind of hear it for a while. So I kind of leave it normally for a few years before I listen. But this album, I've listened to it quite a few times, and I've listened to it like a fan. It's really bizarre. I've never listened to any music.
You can enjoy the experience.
Yes, and I've never made an album. It's been like when I was a teenager, when I was a very young adult, when I made albums a long time ago, you know, over 30 years ago, I would listen to them like a fan because it was so exciting and new, and you know, especially when you're
talking about the Tattooed Love Boys album.
Well, not no, I'm talking that was I mean, I was 18 and 18 and 19, and that was my first album, so that was a completely different vibe. I mean, I don't know how many people, you know, make albums or sign record deals when they're teenagers, but you know, I did. And so you have that kind of teenage thing going on. It's a bit different, but you know, that was a couple of years in my life. The very early Wildheart stuff, before the Troubles, like kind of like sunk in with that band. I was a big fan of, you know, especially like Earth Versus. You know, I was a huge fan of that album. But then I don't know, it becomes your job a bit. You become a bit desensitized, and I think it's a bit weird when musicians listen to their own stuff. I mean, I know some actors and they can't watch themselves. You know, they feel really uncomfortable, and I feel uncomfortable sometimes listening to myself. And you know, I'm 56 in a few weeks' time, and only just now I can actually watch myself on screen. I can watch videos I'm in and not feel uncomfortable. I can hear my voice and not feel uncomfortable, and I can listen to my music as a fan, which is yeah, it's taken a long time to get to that. Maybe I'm just desperate, who knows.
From everything I've listened to on the new album, you seem very content.
I mean, I use music to. There's two things I use music to: express what I love in life, and to also expel the troubles. Things which have episodes in my life where I felt hard done by, ripped off, or someone's really pissed me off, or something has pissed me off. I can put that negative emotion into music, and it's a really healthy outlet. It's a really healthy place to let go of stuff which is causing you any sort of grief, and it's also a great place to let go of stuff that is causing you joy as well. And that's what I use my music for. It's like my version of therapy. It's saved me a fortune, trust me. Yeah. Yeah.
And from what you've said before, I mean, that really is kind of the reason for the title Split. It's divided in a way into the celebratory, as it starts off with Kick Down the Walls,
Yes.
and also as a cathartic process for the things that you just described.
Yes, it goes for a whole journey. I mean, with Kick Down the Walls, which was the inspiration for that song, was the early days of the Wildhearts, when we first started and we first started touring and we just signed a deal. There was when bands get on and when things are going right, you're like a gang, and you're traveling together and you feel invincible, and it's a great feeling. And it's a feeling that you can only have and you should only have when you're young. I mean, old guys feel like that. I mean, they need to get a grip. It's like it's not going to happen. This is like a long time ago, but that feeling is great. So the song kicks off of that, and then it goes to the album kicks off of that, and it goes to Butterfingers, which is pre-Wildhearts. It's my days in Soho in the 80s, and just how good it was. It was a great scene, as you well know. It was a brilliant time, and then I go through other journeys. Victoria's about my girlfriend, and it's a punk rock love song, and it's really hard to write anything about a partner which doesn't reek of cheese, but I don't think it does.
No, we can safely say that.
Yeah, and then I mean the album ends on a song called "The Grass Is Greener," which is me coming through all the shit, realizing that sometimes the grass is greener when you do take yourself out of a negative situation. It could have massive impacts on you. There's lots of negative situations where they can be quite lucrative, and you can make a living from being surrounded by that kind of negative drama. But ultimately, if you take yourself away from it, it can have a massive and positive effect on your life. And it happened to me. I took myself out of a negative situation. Although financially I'm worse off, spiritually and emotionally I'm in a much better place. And that money can't buy that kind of spiritual wealth. And I sound like a hippie now, but I'm not.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think I think the line between punk and hippie is quite small sometimes.
It is, yeah.
But you were saying, I mean, it's a bit of a digression. I don't want to spend time on it. I like the Wildhearts, but it's not my favourite thing in the world. I like a lot of your solo stuff. I like a lot of Ginger's solo stuff more than I like the Wildhearts. But you were saying about getting yourself out of the situation in a way for your own good. Is that what you were referring to, or is it just life in general?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't take ourselves out of the Wildhearts. Ginger stopped the Wildhearts and stopped it mid-flow, and it was like the band had maneuvered itself. We had a decent manager. I thought we had a decent label. We had a good business model, and the band was surviving again. And we got back in the top 10 again, but then it stopped. And the band normally stops when things are going all right. And so I made a conscious decision, and Richie's made a conscious decision not to kind of go back to that. And the reason why is we're a lot older. We're not kids anymore. But you can't invest when we're at this stage in our lives. We can't invest another 3 years into something to have it just stop again. And with my solo music, I work on my own. I have a manager, I run my own label. I record the stuff myself. I write the stuff myself. So I'm not going to let myself down. I'm not going to stop tomorrow. Because if I stop tomorrow, who's going to, feed my son? Who's going to pay my bills? So I can't rely on other people's, mental state to pay my bills, or to provide a living for me. And so it's you get it a lot with artists, and especially with bands. If one part goes wrong, it can have a huge effect, not just on that individual, but all the other people who work for the group and are working for the hive. So right now my hive is, I'm king, I'm queen, I'm worker bee, I'm a soldier. I'm on my own, and I won't let myself down.
No, and you know that. So it's, as you say, you do everything, and it's while that I'm sure that has difficulties, it must in many ways be a relief.
It is a relief, and it's not because I want to do. Believe me, if I could pay someone to do like half the jobs I do, I have a manager. He does the stuff I can't do, and I don't want to do. And I'm right in the process now of getting in the right mental state to start my next album, which I should start within the next 2 weeks recording. And I just need,
Well, when you say recording, sorry to interrupt. You say recording, that means that you have the songs.
I have the ideas, because basically I have an idea for a song. I sit down, fire up my studio, and then I'm off. Yeah, I don't physically pick up an acoustic guitar, write the songs, write all the lyrics, and record it. No, I work like I hit the ground and I run, and whatever comes. I find it's a really cathartic and enjoyable way for me to work with music that way, rather than, so if I've got a chorus, I'll sit down and go, right, where's this chorus going to go? What am I going to add to it? What am I going to take away from it? And I've written like that now for a good 10 years, rather than sitting down writing a whole album. So I know how it's going to sound. I know what I want it to sound like already, but I might not have all the songs, but I never piss in the wind. Ever. I know and exactly where I'm going. I know what I need to do to get there. Yeah. So it's just a bit. I think a lot of musicians work like that now. When things went to digital, and people started having their own setups at home, and they could record on their own, like most musicians can do now. You can have a decent studio on your laptop. You can make an album on that laptop. You don't need a massive record, or you don't need to go into a huge studio. So you don't need to do all that pre-production. You don't need to have those 12 songs ready when you go into that big studio. You can have an idea and spend the next week working on that idea, because it's your setup and you're the producer, you're the guy playing on everything. And that sort of freedom we never had back in the day. And it's a lovely place to be right now. And it's one of the best things about technology and the digital world we live in is it's given musicians and songwriters who can be asked to do stuff for themselves. They've got the ability there. They've got the technology there. It's all at their fingertips now. And you don't need to suck corporate cock. You don't need to sign a, deal. You don't need an unscrupulous manager behind you. You know what I'm saying. If you want to stand up on your own 2 feet, you can do it now.
Getting people to listen to it perhaps is harder, maybe.
It's like, yeah, but that's just life. I mean, there's millions of people who have. It's not just about music. If you have a product to sell, you can have the best piece of furniture in the world, but if you can't get it to someone to buy it, no one's going to buy it. And that's just the same with anything you have. And but that's a completely different thing altogether. Marketing and getting something out there and getting people to hear your music and buy it is a completely different thing. But making it, anyone can do that if they've got the know-how. It's and you can do it relatively cheaply now as well.
I know. I can even demo stuff at home myself, and as you're seeing this morning, this is not my forte. What I did want to ask is what actually, this is not a question that I had prepared, but you were talking about having ideas for what you were doing next, preparing to go in and record, and having a vision in advance, if you like. Does that mean that you already have a fairly clear idea of what the next album will sound like compared to
Yes,
this one?
well, I've got the cover. It's already done. I know what the cover is. The album, I know what the title is. It's called 1980. Like, as in the number 1980 and the year 1980. It's the year I decided I wanted to join a band and become a musician. And it's I've on purpose I've got a lot of drum machines and like 1980, like 80s kind of keyboards and stuff, which I'm looking at now, the sound. So I'm in my head, I hear a new wave punk kind of pop sort of album. So I'm kind of I want to try and kind of get that spirit of that kind of new wave sort of sound, you know, that post-punk sound. And the 80s for me was the most important decade for me as a person and as a musician, because it shaped the person I would later become, you know, the person I am now. You know, I always look back at the 80s. The 90s for me was a real decade, although I did most of my, it was the most successful decade for me as a musician and as a member of a band. But I found the 90s quite, I didn't find it revolutionary, the 90s. I didn't find it, I thought people played it safe in the 90s, very safe. My dad summed it up really well. There was a period in the 90s when my dad said to me, "Where have all the band boys gone?" And, "What do you mean, Daddy?" He goes, "Like, no one looks like they're in bands anymore." And I went, "Yeah, you've got a point there." And he was right. You know, no offense to Oasis or Blur, but they never looked like they were in a band. You know,
No,
those guys
it's a
walked into
different thing.
yeah, you know, and it's like in the 80s, people looked like they were in bands, didn't they? You know, they've such a strong
Even when they
look.
weren't.
Yeah, even when they weren't. Yeah, and I love that. I love that, and that set me up for, you know, the rest of my life. So yeah, 1980, the album's called.
Oh, great. Well, that's interesting. And yeah, I'd wanted to ask before actually, and talking about, you know, people who, when everybody looked in a band, even though they weren't, is kind of taking back to Butterfingers and what you were talking about before. And you said before that you're not particularly nostalgic, but to an extent, I suppose everybody is briefly, because that's what Butterfingers is about.
Yes.
But where does the title come from?
It has absolutely no reference to the 80s or to what the song's about. When there's the riff on there that goes down, 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 and when I first played that riff, I used to sing Butterfingers, and that was what I was just singing, Butterfingers, da, 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 Butterfingers, and that's why the song's called Butterfingers.
Lovely.
And I mean, Butterfingers is a really nice, it's kind of a nice little term, isn't it? Butterfingers.
Yeah. No, curious because I couldn't work it out, and now you've explained why I couldn't work it out.
Yeah. And I was really clumsy as a kid, so everyone used to say I had Butterfingers as well. So,
and you've maybe pierced an idea that I thought I'd found something, but I obviously haven't, because you're the follow-up to Split will almost certainly be called 1980.
yes.
I'd noticed, I am dyslexic, but I worked it out on my fingers. So that every solo CJ album has 5 letters.
Yes.
And I didn't know if there was a reason for that or that's just coincidence.
No, I actually just, the first album solo one was called Mabel, and then it just fell into a habit, five letter words. And I think it's quite nice. You know, I've called it Split, so I'm splitting away from the 5 letter thing. I think it's kind of great. Yeah, just going with numbers. You know now, so I might. You know, who knows what the next one might be called 1605, the year I was born.
Oh yeah, well we're the same age, so don't pull that one. But yeah, no, I'm really interested to hear about the new stuff, which is kind of strange to be talking about. Well, not strange, but interesting to be talking about that when this is literally just dropped as an album. People are just beginning to hear it. I was lucky enough, thanks to you, to actually hear it to get the review. And yeah, as I say, I think it's the most well-rounded. I think it's I don't really like always using the term earworm, but if we're going to use that, there's a lot of them. There's melodies that just stick in your head from the get go with Kick Down the Walls, with Butterfingers, but I mean all the way through, and particularly for me, Give the Dog a Bone was the one that you just keep pressing play. It's just a great song.
Yeah, that chorus. It's really hard because I wrote the song, but I'm a fan of that chorus. It's got I just think it's the kind of chord structure and the vocal melody. It's just one of those choruses that just you hear it and it's like an old friend, giving you a hug. And I think that's what good pop music does. It's the one thing I love about pop music is it unashamedly rips itself off all the time. It's not about, you can't rewrite pop music, you can't restructure it. It's a type of music and it's rigid. And it's about getting to that chorus as quickly as possible. But that chorus, it needs to be familiar. It needs to be something you think you've heard before. And 9 times out of 10, you have heard it before. But, there's a slight change to it. And that's what I love about pop music. And like Give a Dog a Bone, I 100% ripped off that chorus from someone. I don't know who. I might have ripped it off from 4 or 5 bands, but it's definitely not original. But, it is like an old friend, saying hi.
And but that's also the difficulty. I mean, I write only my little way to amuse myself in the band here, but that is unappreciated, no, not underappreciated. The idea that yes, pop music is limited. You want to hear, people generally want to hear something that's familiar in a way, but it's also incredibly difficult to do. I think when you're generally working with 3 to 5 chords, generally. It
is really difficult to do. I think it's right. I like all types of music, and sometimes I have the mood to hear some great riffing and stuff like that. Shredders, lead guitarists, most of them leave me very cold. So I was shock horror. I was never a Van Halen fan because Eddie Van Halen's guitaring just left me. I just don't like shredding. I've always been about a chorus and always been about a tune. So, Eddie Van Halen, give me Angus Young any day, that kind of blues, simple, it's just, and there's nothing wrong. You can shred, you can do simple solos. But for me, it was always about the chorus, always about the tune, because that's what and all the best guitar solos have structure and they have tunes. It's like a vocal line. And I've said this in another podcast. There's so many shredders out there, and they're just going 100 miles an hour, but you can't remember any of it. And then you'll get the dude who'll play a tune on the guitar, and that's the thing you'll remember. Less is always more when it comes to music, and with the influx of TikTok as well, there seems to be these drummers who drum at 100 miles an hour, and it's just like, it's great. You're really, really good, but where's the song? How many songs are you going to be playing at that sort of speed? It's great that you can do a roll that fast. Your double bass drum is the fastest thing I've ever heard in my life. But it's not a tune, it's not a song. And yes, many, many musicians and fans out there of that type of showboating. I just want to hear a song. Give me a great song any day. And I don't care. I like a lot of contemporary pop music. I listen to a lot of Radio 1, a lot of dance music, because you hear tunes there and you hear melodies there and songs. And, so I do listen to a lot of kind of, modern and contemporary pop music. I love it. Absolutely adore it. You can't beat a tune. Just can't.
A melody has obviously, it's apparent in pretty much everything you've been involved with all the way through, because coming from Bedford, and knowing Bedford Esquires, which thankfully is still there, Bedfordians, I saw Honeycrack every time they played there. I saw the Jellies every time they played there. Was the Mau Mau's the other band?
Yeah, the Mau Mau's. I had it. Yeah.
Okay, but that's, I mean, and from before that, you know,
Yeah.
from Earth Versus onwards, the where you've been involved, there is always a clear, memorable melody.
Yeah, it's in my DNA, you know, and you know, I think a lot of that is listening to song-based bands when I was a kid as well, and growing up with in a very musical family, and it's like, but you know, in the same breath, I mean, sometimes, I mean, I like a lot of riffy bands as well, and I think that was part of the charm of the Wild Hearts, is the fact that we'd have that infectious melody, but mix it with something really intense and heavy as well. And I think it's I tell you, a band who does it really, Slipknot are really good at that. They'll have a really catchy chorus, but just a really intense verse, and it's really like structured and really worked out and technical, but then they'll pull it in with a really, like, it's a pop chorus, you know. And I like that. I like it when bands do that. I like when they, you know, you think you've got them, and then all of a sudden they turn into ABBA or something. You know, it's pure pop, and I like that a lot. With, you know, and you do get it a lot with rock bands. It's a good trick, you know, for any rock band to do, is to pull the audience back in with a pop chorus.
Well, I think all rock music needs that, or at least for me, it does. As you said about the shredding thing, it's the opposite of, well, we're talking about you, not me, but yeah, I would much rather listen to something that has melody. So I would rather listen to Wilco Johnson or Link Ray or someone like that who is playing 5 or 6 repetitive notes. But that's what works. Well, you know, that's one of the reasons.
I'm a big Clash fan, and you know, I love the way I mean, it always makes me laugh when people say, "Oh, the Clash weren't a punk band," you know. It's like, why? I mean, it's like, of course they were a punk band, you know. It's like, you know, define punk. You know, it's like there's lots of, you know, like next you'll be saying like Rancid on a punk band, you know. You know, Temple Tudor weren't a punk band, the Pistols weren't punk band. You know, it's so diverse. But the Clash, the one thing you do, especially those first 3 albums, is how melodic they are, and it's, the choruses are just huge.
Mm.
And you know, it's again coming back round to melody, how important it is. Well, for me, you know, and it all comes from pop music. That's where that melody comes from, and you know, so yeah, I'll always have a love for pop. But I said, yeah, 1980 for the next album. I'm still, you know, I'm still keeping that punk thing. I'm not going to turn into the Eurythmics or something, Bananarama. Yeah. Could you imagine that if I made an album that sounded like?
Well, I mean, if you can dance, I don't even know if you can dance. Well, maybe.
I'm
But
a
no,
kid in
I wasn't.
dungarees and a bra. Yeah.
So
You're
actually, hmm?
now. Yeah.
I wanted to because, I mean, as I said, I really loved the Jellies, who were fantastic on record and probably even better live. But also Honeycrack. Um, I saw in another interview where you were talking about them and saying that when you do think back, obviously thinking back to the Wild Hearts in the early period is a different thing and a different energy. But when you thought back to Honeycrack, that you were mainly smiling.
Yes.
And is that the whole band? Was that the influence of Willie? Was that or just a really good time?
It was just I was sacked from the Wild Hearts, and Honeycrack was the band that came out of that situation, and it was so different to the Wild Hearts, the whole setup and the people, you know, just the sound as well. I thought it was a, you know, there was elements of the Wild Hearts in there because I was in Honeycrack, and you know, I'm a part of the Wild Hearts as well. There's the, you know, my DNA is in that band, regardless of what, you know, some people are saying. And uh with Honeycrack, it was just, they were different, like they're a different type of creature altogether, and it just, it felt really new. And I loved the guys in there as well. I mean, they're really eccentric sort of individuals, and they just came from a different area. to me musically, and so they taught me a lot. And they being around guys. They were serious players, but they were really good in the studio. All of them knew how to record music and make music, and they knew the kind of science of music, which I wasn't that savvy with. The Wildhearts were a rock and roll band, and yeah, we made music, but getting high and getting fucked off our faces was seemed to be more important back then than the actual. Yeah, it's like we were a rock and roll band, and with Honeycrack, it was like yes, they had elements of rock and roll about them, but they were just really serious, and they taught me that if you knew how to record yourself, you can start working for yourself. If I hadn't have been in Honeycrack, I wouldn't be making my solo albums myself as well. There was two people pushed me on the journey to start recording for myself, and that was Willie Dowling, and the other person was Jace Edwards, a guitarist from Wolfsbane.
Mm-hmm.
Those two people they're the reason I'm talking to you today, and the reason why I make my own albums, and I can still just about make a living from it. Yeah, so I'll always be thankful to Willie Dowling and Jace Edwards for that.
I'm sure you learned a lot from them, because they're both amazing musicians.
Yes, incredible musicians. Yeah, and I mean, Willie taught me a lot about harmonies and how music is kind of structured as well. And everyone needs to work with people who are better than you, and so you can learn. And sometimes you get a lot of fragile egos in the music industry, and people mistake success with being really, really good, and they're two completely different things. You get people who aren't that good who are ridiculously successful, and people who are amazingly good who can't even make a penny. And sometimes you've got to let your ego go and go, yeah, I'm actually not that good. I can learn off you. And I've been given those situations a few times in my life. And, when I have been in that situation, I've sat back and went, yeah, I'm pretty shit. Teach me. And I've learned. I've learned from those situations. Yeah.
I suppose I ought to look at my questions to make sure that I don't. I barely looked at them. It's been nice to chat, and I knew I had a good idea, but I just wanted to make sure that I've covered. Oh yes, because you have clear ideas about each album before you record them. Split, as I say, has a lot of optimism. It has some anger in there, but it's with the exception of Butterfingers, it's mainly forward looking. Siege, I have to be honest, for me, the sound of it I get, but it's really intense.
Yes,
obviously.
intense on purpose. Yeah.
Oh, clearly, I'm sure everything that you do has a purpose. It's thought through. So was that something that just had to be cathartic from the start? It's almost like a Scream album. So was there a particular reason, or?
Yeah, it was recorded during lockdown. So I started writing it during the very first lockdown and started recording it as well. And that whole period was just awful. It was a terrible period, and there was no way I could make an album which was going to sing about the love and joys of life, because no one was really living life like that. There was some unscrupulous individuals who were making a lot of money out of the suffering of most of the planet. And closer to home, my mum and dad, my dad passed last year. They both have dementia. They're both in different homes. They couldn't see each other for 16 months.
Yeah.
Well, you got like fucking assholes, dodging cakes and shit like that.
Yeah.
Being hijacked by cakes. Can you believe it? And so you are going to, as I said, I put that negative energy into music, and that album Siege was me venting about, and I don't like to express how I feel politically or what I feel about religion, or what I don't like to talk about it. I like, I drop clues in my music how I feel about certain things, but I don't use my music as a platform to vent or as a soapbox. I never have. But yeah, Siege I needed to make because I was furious. Absolutely furious.
Did it help?
Massively. Yeah, massively. Yeah. You know, there's a song on there called Shipwreck, which is about the Tories, and it's about what they were doing at that time. It helped massively to scream like that. It just it's great. It's great. There's nothing better in the world than shouting.
Well,
It's
screaming certainly helps more than clapping for the NHS, I think.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, when you're really angry, stick your head in a pillow and just scream into the pillow. It's great. It's a
Well,
great.
it's primal scream therapy. Yeah.
Yes, yes, so you know, it was great. It was such a, but I don't have that. I'm not. I mean, there's a lot of shit going in the world, and if you know, if I stop, sometimes it's like fuck, it's so depressing. But um, we were trapped, weren't we, for a long time during that whole COVID thing. I think people will look back at it and go, what the fuck? But we were trapped, and yeah, so that energy had to go somewhere, and it went into my music. Thank God.
Well, I'm glad it made a difference for you. I just came here. I just moved to France in October 2019,
Right.
and I just started, I have one. I had one friend who lives up the road. Who I still have, my oldest friend, and yeah, from a different everybody's perspective, it was difficult, obviously, and I just started meeting people, one of whom, Mickey, is now one of my best friends, who's also the drummer in my duo. But yeah, you just start socializing, and then suddenly, beginning of March, boom, nothing.
Yes.
Just in here on my own for weeks on end. You could go out here. You can go out for 1 hour, but make sure you have your document with you. It's like, wow, this is really surreal. And yeah, I hope we don't have to repeat it.
Yeah, I think it'd be really hard to lock people down if it ever did it a second time. I think there'll be a lot more people, you know, fighting against it. I mean, for me personally, it was the fact that my mum and dad couldn't see each other, and then when the curtain was lifted, when the gates were open, my mum had spent so much time confined to her home, her care home, that I think she had I think it's called cave syndrome or something, where you don't want to go back out, and she's never ever like ventured back out. And you know, she's too weak now and too poorly, but she wouldn't go and see my dad. She couldn't come to my dad's funeral because of it. And it's just it's awful. It's awful that what it did to them too. So yeah, I'll always carry some resentment, but I don't let it shape my life. I see a lot of people online, and I have a lot of friends who went down the rabbit hole and they haven't come out of it. And they believe I mean, they're a couple of TikTok videos away from believing the Earth is flat. I mean, they're bad. They're bad, and it's like I bet you're gonna get people coming. What, you mean the Earth isn't flat?
No, I think perhaps quite a lot of us have had a similar thing where we've just looked at people, and obviously I'm a bit removed because most of my friends are in another country now. But some of the stuff you see online, and start to join the dots of their mind really unraveling, and you think, you know, I've just got to let you go now because you can't say anything.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, it's. You know, I spend a lot of time looking at the news, looking at what's going on. Especially, I mean, I have a 9-year-old boy, so I became a dad when I was 46, and it's quite old to become a father for the first time. And as soon as he arrived, my whole world just flipped on its head. It was like it wasn't about me; it was about the world my boy's going to live in, and I really worry about the world he's going to live in. And what's coming. So it's one of the reasons why I don't look backwards much. But I've got an album called 1980, but it's a different. It's not. I'm not longing to go back there. You know, I love, you know, the world I'm living in right now. You know, I might not love the world, but my world, I dig it. You know, I have an all right life. You know, I don't have nowhere near amount as much money as I thought I'd have by now. I don't have the Aston Martin I've always dreamt about. You know, but you know, my car works. I have a beautiful boy, but you know, he's 9, and what's the world going to be like in 20 years' time? But I won't buy into conspiracy, and I won't buy into that fear mongering, because that's what it is. It's selling fear, and some people are going to believe it, and their whole lives are governed by these conspiracy theories, and it's such a shame. So, you know, it's awful. It's a disease. You know, you've got to be rational, and it's getting harder and harder for people to, you know, think rationally. You know,
Mm.
and I have no idea. It's you know, what's going on. Yeah.
But speaking of the future, or hopefully the immediate, fairly immediate future, I'm guessing you have plans to tour.
I do. See, I don't tour much as a solo artist. Right. I joined a band for one reason, not to make music, not to be in the studio, but to tour. I wanted to travel around the world, playing on big stages, and I did that for many, many years, touring, and I did it at a decent level as well. You know, tour buses, crew. I've toured more with a full crew and on tour buses and decent hotels than I have in pubs and playing, you know, in the back of vans. And
Well, I'd say
you know,
that's pretty lucky then overall, isn't it?
it is, yeah. But I've had, you know, I had like three big deals all in a row up until, you know, I've had record deals up until I was in my 40s. You know, I had a record deal up until, you know, 2 years ago. And you know, I've always toured at a certain level. So when the minute I go solo, I have to kind of step back. But even I did a solo tour last year. We were on a tour bus and we had, you know, a crew with us. But I'm looking at touring next year, kind of around about April, to do a kind of little split tour. But it
Mm.
my manager's saying you've got to go out and play some shows. It's what, you know, it's what you do. And I'm going, yeah, but I want to. You can't be on a tour bus. You can't have a full crew. You can't afford it anymore. So you're just
Well,
gonna
that
have to
you
suck
know,
it up.
actually, that you've just answered my question. That must be
Mm.
getting harder and harder, not just for you, but for anybody who has a career, has a back catalogue, but is now independent. It must be quite difficult financially
It
when you do.
is, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the other thing is that I have a band. I need to pay them. Like, you know, I can't just get a bunch of people and tell them to come on tour with me and I get paid and they don't. So they need to be paid. They don't get paid a crazy wage, but they need to get something. So before I even start touring, I'm already, you know, if I don't get a certain fee each night, you know, I could end up in debt here. So it's a business, you know,
Mm.
it's not, you know, you could look at it all romantically and poetically and say, oh, you know, you're a troubadour and you're going out on the road, in, you know, entertaining the masses. But no, it's my job.
Mm.
And the minute I don't get paid for it, it becomes a hobby, and it's a hobby I'm actually paying to do. And it's
Yeah.
always been my job. It's always been my bread and butter. I've always made, you know, it's been my, this is how long I've had day jobs for in my entire life. I'm 56. It's 5 years, not even that. I've had day jobs, proper day jobs. I've always played in bands. I've always made a living from playing in bands. So my manager says, you've got to go out and play. So we're right now, I've got a new agent and he's just trying to juggle it. And I am going to go out and play.
Mm.
And I will make some money. And but that's what it is. It's just getting it all. It's not just about, you know, calling up the Dug and Duck, going, "Oh, can you put me on Saturday afternoon?" You know, I have to rehearse up my band, and you know, I'll need a driver. I'll need someone to sell some merch, and I'll probably need one roadie as well. And you know, if I can't kind of do it at that level, I could go out and do it acoustically, but if I shoot myself in the head, then go out and play
It's. I'm
acoustically.
guessing that's not you, CJ, is it?
Honestly, is there anything more boring than seeing a rock musician or a punk rock musician on stage with an acoustic guitar singing their greatest hits? I mean, it's, yeah, you can make some money, but I seriously, I'd rather go and work in McDonald's. You know, I really would. Yeah, it's just it's. I find it quite tragic. It's all. Do you know the League of Gentlemen, the show League of Gentlemen?
Of course.
Do
Yeah.
you remember Creme Brulee, Les, the
Of
music? Yeah,
course. Yeah. It's a
it's a
shit
bit like
business.
that. Yeah, it's
Mm.
really, I think there's something really sad about older musicians, especially the ones who are still really hungry and are still chasing that dream, which they never quite got. And it's like, hopefully I don't come across that way. It'd be awful. I did. I've still got a passion for music, but I've got a passion for electric music and being on stage and making a fucking racket, not strumming my guitar sounding like bloody Bob Dylan. It's not for me. There's nothing wrong with it, but there's other people that, if you want to sound that soft, go out and do it. But it's not for me. I want to be bombastic. I want to go on stage with my boots on and my low strung guitar and some volume and a few lights.
Yes, as I guessed. Yeah. No, I couldn't see you as an acoustic troubadour somehow.
I've tried it. So, I mean, before people go, oh, you should try it. I have tried it. And every acoustic gig I've ever done, I've had some good ones, but it's not the same as with a band and, that raw power you get from having a band. It's wonderful. It's addictive now.
It's certainly that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good thing to be addicted to as well. There's a
Absolutely.
lot worse to be addicted to.
Well, obviously, I'll keep an eye out, and any tour dates that come up will be on RPM, obviously, as they always are. And you might even be able to drag me over the water to the UK, because I don't get over that often. I've been over once in 4 years, but a lot of that was to do with confinement.
You should come and see us. I mean, I have a good band. We put out a road movie last year, Kicks, and my band are great. They're a lot younger than me as well, so they have it's really nice feeding off their enthusiasm as well. I'm like a vampire. I suck the youth out of them. It's brilliant.
I've been listening a lot to the live album. Yeah, so it might be too early to say, but are you expecting it to be the same musicians?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we're booking gigs now, and I know a couple of gigs confirmed for September, but I'm specifically looking at April now. The last 2 weeks in April, and looking at some festivals. So we're getting gigs offered to us now. So I think there'll be an announcement within the next month about the April shows. Yeah. So
good.
Same band as well. Yeah. One thing about me is I've always been very loyal, and if me and Ginger always fall out, routinely falling out. And, I'm not going to go back and work with the Wildhearts, I have to draw a line there. But, I've always been quite loyal to the guy. And, I've worked with him longer than I've worked with any other musician I've worked with. But if I find that people who are good, I like to stick with them. It's just some of the bands I've been in and the circumstances. It's enabled, it's made relationships end when I hadn't wanted them to end. And so if I find people I really enjoy working with and they're good at their job, I don't see the point of keeping to chopping and changing. You should be loyal to those people, and stick with them, because ultimately they make you sound and look better.
Well, your reputation precedes you. Not wanting to blow smoke anywhere, but I'd be really pleased at this point in your career to still have that reputation as somebody who is a good guy.
Thank you. I mean, when I look back when I was a younger man, I mean, there's points in my life where I've let myself down, I've let my family down, and you kind of look back and say, "Fuck me, you're such an arsehole," But there comes a point in everyone's life where you're just old enough not to behave in that manner anymore, and most of the people I started out with, most of the people I work with are all closer to 60 than they are 20 now. Yeah. And if they have tantrums or if they behave a certain way, it's like, Jesus Christ, man, you really need to reel it in. There's nothing wrong with being angry, annoyed, pissed off, but you have to deal with it in a much more mature and ultimately cooler manner. There's nothing better than looking at an older person and seeing the way, the class, the decorum they have, and the way they handle situations. I always wanted to be that cooler older guy, the guy you see sat in the corner with a decent clothes, dapper looking gentleman. He's got a story to tell, but you also know ultimately he's a gentleman. And I've always wanted to strive to be that, because that person was my dad. And that is the person I want to be, that gentleman, the cool guy. My dad was West Indian, he was as cool as they come. And you know, that is the person I want to be. You know, I don't want to be drug fueled, drunk old bastard in the corner who's bitter and twisted and bitching about this person, that person, or you know, their 10 ex-wives. I never wanted to be that person. Nothing wrong with it, but it ain't me.
Well, I'm glad you've had the experience of the role model of your dad, because not everybody.
Yes. Yeah, the coolest guy I ever knew.
That's lovely. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Is there anything else you want to say, CJ? Is there anything you want to tell the people watching?
No, I'm not really. I mean, just I mean, I can't guarantee that I'm always going to be making music. I mean, right now, you know, in the last 5 years, I've come really close to stopping. You know, and it's not because of boredom. It's not because of a lack of passion. It's purely a financial thing. You know, it gets harder and harder as you get older to make music. And you know, I'm not expecting to sign a big record deal. I had huge record deals when I was a young man, and that's when I should have had huge record deals. All I want to do is make a bit of bread and butter, and bring home some bacon from this. And there comes a point sometimes where the actual work you're putting into this isn't paying you out enough. You're not making enough money. And there's been a few points over the last few years where I've been like, maybe it'd just be easier just to try and get a day job. But you know, I'm 56 next month. You know, I've got, you know, in 15 years time, I'm going to be in my 70s, and, you know, I ain't going to be running around, you know, being this punk rocker then, you know. And you've got to think this is the second half of the last third of my life. You know, I'm kind of, you kind of, old age is approaching, and, you know, that's a guarantee. And it's also a privilege to be heading towards that. And so I can never promise I'm always going to be making music, but right now I'm not stopping. I'm going to make another album, and I'll probably make another album after that, and I'm going to go out and play some shows, and I'm aiming to play shows every year now as well. So I'm kind of thinking, yeah, you might see me with that acoustic guitar before you.
I doubt that, but it's lovely to see that your career is still intact as an independent musician, as you said. That's the way that I see it, as somebody who's more a reviewer now than a musician, really. And we see it all the time, you know, that it's hard. You're right, in the terms of technology, it's much simpler, much easier in some respects immediate to get your music out there, but to get people to listen to it, to get the promotion for it, is, in my opinion, harder. But certainly for us here at RPM, that's why we do it. You know, we do it simply because we love it. We promote the music that we love, that we believe in, that makes us happy, and we promote all kinds of music, but predominantly independent music. And obviously, you know, we all do other things. No one gets paid for it, because, you know, it's music journalism is, you know, unless you're writing for a broadsheet, it's dead. You know, you're not going to make any money from it. So, but we're passionate, and you know, we're all more or less the same age. So I like to think we know what we're talking about. We've done it a bit ourselves, and that's why we're here. We want to push the music that we believe in.
You said, you know, passion. I still have passion in me. I still have that passion. And when I make albums like Split, it reinforces that passion. So yeah, right now, I'm still thinking, yeah, I'm gonna make a few more albums at least. So yeah, you're not getting rid of me that easy, Ginger.
Oh, and on that bombshell, which used to be Zig and Zag's thing, and you played on the big.
Can I just say, you know, jokes aside, I wish absolutely no ill will to anyone I've been in a band with, or are currently in a band with. It's just not me. I've never been. Anyone who knows me knows I'm quite positive, and as Ginger well knows, I do not and have never any grudges. So you know, and I wish him all the best, wish Danny all the best. And you know, my brother Richie, who's kind of retired now, you know, we stay in contact, and you know, he's just the most wonderful human being. But yeah, I don't bear anyone any ill will.
No, that seems pretty clear.
Brilliant, and thank you very much. It's been, I mean, it's been really enjoyable, and yeah, some of these things can be they can be a bit trying, but your questions were really nice, and yeah, I really appreciate all the support, and thank you for liking my album as well.
Oh, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Brilliant.
Especially as this is the first podcast, and hopefully, if all goes well, we'll continue and we'll be back here at some point in the future.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And if you do make it over to some of the shows, come up and say hi as well.
Of course I will.
Brilliant. Excellent.
Okay, thanks a lot. We'll end there. If I can work out how to do this even, folks, because it is obviously the first time. Thank you very much, and see you soon.